Hello, my name is Lachlan, and I'm a South African man in my early 30s living with quadriplegic cerebral palsy. I have been encouraged over the last several years by friends and followers to share a more intimate look at what life with a severe disability is like. I have not really done so for two main reasons. Firstly, I am of the opinion that the fact that I'm a quadriplegic is one of the least interesting things about me. And second, I never want anybody to hear my story and look at me with pity, because I have no use for pity from either myself or from others. However, I recently wrote a rather brutally honest post on Facebook while dealing with a particularly difficult day, and it received quite a positive reaction among those who saw it. So I figure that it might actually be helpful for me to share what the real experience of cerebral palsy is like, because in so doing, I might help others who haven't experienced it to feel less afraid when coming forward with questions or any confusion that they might have. My intention here is to create a series of short, easy to digest videos to explain various aspects of cerebral palsy and how it impacts on my daily life. For the most part, these will be unedited and in the form of a stream of consciousness, because I want to be as raw and open on the topic as I possibly can be. In this first episode, my goal is to explain to you what cerebral palsy actually is, and to kind of elaborate on some of the more profound physical effects it has on my body. Cerebral palsy, which I will now refer to by its common abbreviation of CP, is a neurological disorder which results from damage to the brain's motor center. In my case, it was caused by complications during my birth, which deprived me of oxygen and resulted in the damage. CP isn't just one physical condition. It is actually the term used to refer to a spectrum of similar conditions all grouped together. And one person's experience of CP may be completely different to another's in terms of severity and difficulty in dealing with it. In some cases, a person who has been diagnosed with CP will hardly give the appearance of being disabled at all, except to those who know what to look for, as in perhaps a slight limp or general clumsiness as they perform manual tasks. In my case, unfortunately, the damage to my brain was quite extensive, and so I am wheelchair bound and all my limbs are affected, hence the term quadriplegic. A common misconception which I would like to put to rest is that when most people hear the term quadriplegic, or hear a person described as being a quadriplegic, they assume that that person is unable to use their legs at all, or in some way lacks physical sensation in the lower part of their body. That actually is not the case. Medically speaking, all that quadriplegic means is that whatever physical disability you have has an effect on all of your limbs. Quad meaning four, so both arms and both legs. Contrary to the widely held belief that being a quadriplegic automatically renders one unable to feel their legs, my CP actually makes my legs overly sensitive in many ways, and that in itself presents a whole nother kind of problem which must be dealt with. In terms of its practical impact on my daily life, CP affects almost everything that I do. My fine motor skills, things like tying knots, doing and undoing buttons on a shirt, and pouring a glass of water, are all very difficult for me because, how to explain it? It's like my brain reacts to input at half speed. So even when I notice that I'm going to drop something, it takes a lot of effort for me to react quickly enough to pick it up or not to allow it to fall in the first place. Living with CP also involves dealing with a lot of physical pain because the damage that causes it also causes extreme muscular spasms, which can only be controlled by extreme focus and a very kind of concerted effort to remain relaxed, because in times of either emotional or physical stress, my body will quite literally lock up and prevent me from being able to do even simple tasks. When I mentioned earlier that CP affects almost everything that I do, I was not speaking metaphorically, because, for example, CP can even affect my vision because it affects muscles, and the eyes are controlled by muscles as well. So when I'm upset, my vision can actually blur and make it difficult for me to process visual information. Upon meeting me for the very first time, even people without any medical knowledge can see that there is something wrong with me beyond just being some guy sitting in a wheelchair, because all of my physical movements are somewhat labored and jittery in their quality. I don't move smoothly like a regular person would. That goes back to what I mentioned about how my body reacts to input at half speed. Because of this, and the wheelchair itself, it is common for strangers to assume that I am in some way mentally handicapped or retarded. But allow me to assure you that although my physical difficulties are numerous and profound, there is absolutely nothing wrong with my mental faculties. Throughout the course of this video, you will no doubt have begun to notice the unusual cadence with which I speak. That is because CP also has a measurable effect on my breath control and vocal projection abilities. In fact, I had to enter the school system here in South Africa at the age of about 2 years old in order to receive speech, physical, and occupational therapy, because unlike in the West, it is not common for people with disabilities to be educated in the same schools as those who are physically normal. Although there are notable exceptions, we tend to be educated in specialized schools away from the rest of the population, which is something I intend to discuss in a future episode of this series. For now though, the last thing I want to leave you with is the assurance that, unlike many other physical disabilities, CP is not degenerative, which means that it will not directly lead to a decline in my health or lead to my death at an untimely age. As I said at the beginning of this episode, sharing these things in such graphic detail goes against my natural instinct. So I hope that by making this series, I will be sharing information that will broadly be of use to you in some way. If you find value in content like this, then I would ask you to consider buying some of my merchandise, subscribing to me via Patreon, or sending me a tip via PayPal. And until next time, farewell.